going to move kind of quickly. And I also just want to say that this is, we'll try to give as much information as we can, but nothing replaces coming in and seeing us and talking specifically about your, specific situation. So, also, if you can hold your questions till the end, that would be great. Unless it's something so pressing that we must address in the benefit of everybody. Okay, I'm going to talk about networking first. And I think I saw all of you cringe when I said networking, because for some reason it has that effect on people, just the word. It sounds, I wish it was a different word. But, and so it's sort of an idea and a process. It's hard to really nail down exactly what networking is, but it's actually something that's very familiar. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Let's say for you, now you're on law school. If, say, a friend of yours from college contacted you that you hadn't seen in a while, so I have a friend who's thinking about going to law school, but they don't know the first thing about, how to do tests or, getting information about schools or how to apply. Would you mind just talking to them for a few minutes and, giving them your experience? I mean, what would you do? Would you hang up on this person or slam down the phone and tell them to go away? No, you would be happy, talk to them for a little while and, give them whatever information you had. And that you have just been the target of networking. That person's friend asked around, how do you find out information about law school? You can contact, they're putting in touch with you. That's networking. And then sort of take that one step further. Let's say prior to law school, you did something else, and you worked anywhere, like for a restaurant or an advertising. And say someone, another friend of a friend approached you and wanted to talk about that. And, you were really impressed. You talked to this person, just gave them information, and you were really impressed with them. And just by coincidence, your old employer contacted you and said, oh, we have an opening here. Do you know anyone that does this? And you'd think of the person that contacted you with interest in that field, and you put that person in touch with your old employer. That's another example of how networking can work. So networking sounds much more complicated than it actually is. It's really just making personal contact with people, getting information, laying groundwork, letting people know what you're interested in, and often that turns in, one thing leads to another, and a lot of jobs, great jobs, internships are found that way. That's why it's important, why we urge you to. And you might think, well, I don't know where to get, I don't know anyone. Like, how am I ever going to network? I don't know the hiring partner in the law firm. I don't know the regional director of the government agency. But what you have to remember about networking is that it's not about who you know. It's not about knowing people, it's about meeting people, like getting out there and making contacts with people and getting the word out that you're interested in doing what a particular practice area, working for a particular organization, and seeing how you can eventually meet the people you need to in order to build a good network of contacts. So before I talk more about nuts and bolts of networking, and how to go about the process, some of you may say, why should I bother doing this? It just sounds like it's an extra work that I need to do it. But the reasons to do it are many. For one thing, a lot of jobs are never advertised. We get lots of listings on EmployerNet, spring recruiting, but a lot of really great jobs never hit, any law school's job advertisement pages. Because they go from person to person. If someone works there, and then the employer says, hey, can you recommend And so unless you are regularly making a point of letting people know that you're looking, what you're looking for, getting information, no one's going to know to think of you to pass that job on. So that's the hidden job market is out there, and you can only access it through networking. Another thing is even jobs that are advertised, once a job is advertised, an employer can get just swamped with resumes. So if your resume is one of a bunch of resumes in a pile on an employer's desk, and you have some way to access that employer to get your resume noticed, you have to follow up on these leads and pursue any contacts you have that might achieve that goal of getting your resume from the bottom of the pile to the top of the pile. Because believe me, you're doing the employer a favor as well, because the employer would so much rather get a referral for a job, rather than having to sift through a huge pile of resumes, many of which look the same. And even if it's a friend or a friend's old roommate's cousin's brother, that employer would rather have that kind of a referral, for some reason put this person for an interview rather than having to sift through those resumes themselves. So that's, if you are a good Samaritan, you can think that your networking is actually doing the employer. If you feel like you can't just act for your own interests. And if nothing else, a lot of the steps you take for networking, a lot of the sort of more formal steps you take for networking are good practice for interviewing. I mean, they sort of go hand in hand with some steps. And I'll get to that a little bit later. All right. I think the thing about networking you really have to keep in mind is that it really is a process, and it's something that you're going to do your whole, not just through law school, but through the entire time you are in the work world. We have many examples, and I'll just cite my own. I never looked for, I was a labor lawyer for many years.
Don't date yourself.
I know, in Seattle, after I graduated from law school. And I looked for my first job, and found my first job, but after that, I never looked for another job after that. People came to me because I put the word out, I'm looking, and people said, oh, I didn't know you were looking, well, why don't you apply here? And I never really had to send out resumes or cover letters or look for a job in the same way I had prior to being in the work world, because I was in the loop for the night. I heard about things, and that's very typical. That's the way things work once you're out in the work world. As a student, you need to find ways to insert yourself into that loop, and networking is how you do it. And I think just something else you have to keep in mind. It might not feel like you're doing anything. Networking is just sort of amorphous. If you write a cover letter and send it out to 500 employers, just in a mass mailing, I'm sure if you're going to have a cover letter workshop, cover letter writing workshop, they would explain that to you. But at least it feels concrete. Like you put stamps on letters and you fold them up and then send them out, and whew, did my job searching. Networking doesn't feel as concrete as that, but it is just as, if not more important to do. And you really have to really work it in, and think of it as part of the job searching process, just as important as writing letters and sending out things. And networking can be strange because you might think you get a really good lead for a job, like someone who does the hiring for the exact place you want to work, and you're somehow put in touch with that person. Sometimes that kind of lead turns into, it fizzles out and turns into nothing. But then some random thing that you do ends up being, or a person you meet, or at the event you attended, but that ends up, you never thought would lead anywhere. That ends up being what is the key to you getting a job involved. So just every bit of networking that you can do is important. All right, so you might think, oh, I don't know what to do. You don't even know what to do. But you do know, sitting there right now, you have lots of places to begin letting people know that you are looking for a summer job or a part-time internship for the next semester or whatever it is. And you can start with college friends, former professors, current professors, and in fact, a word about current, or law school professors in general. If you, how many first years do we have here?
How many upperclassmen?
Any second and third years?
Not one.
Okay. Well, during the course of your time here in law school, I urge you strongly, I'm sure my colleagues like this, to get to know at least one professor on the faculty that can serve as a reference later on. You don't have to do it today or tomorrow or even, but
By the time
keep
you
it
graduate.
in mind. If you graduate from here without having really connected or, try to get to know a professor, or have them get to know you, or work on something, a project for them, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage down the road because professors can be not only for networking purposes, but for references, just other things that you definitely need. Okay, so besides those that I've mentioned, any organizations that you belong to or go to, like any volunteer work you do, or church or synagogue, or what have you, any former employers, even if it's, say you were a bartender, I would just, if you keep in touch with your former coworkers who are also bartenders.
Lots of lawyers and bars.
I know, and plus, it's very, well, okay, I don't know why that popped in. It's not, like I said, it's not, you don't have to know the hiring partner. Like, I'm sure you know people that either know lawyers or are related to lawyers or are related to people that, or have neighbors that do something that's interesting to you, and it's very important to, get the word out. Don't think that all these people are thinking about you and your job search. They probably know that you're all very much good and go-getters and assume, they're probably already working or they probably already have a job. And they don't, you have to let people know that you're looking. Don't assume they're thinking about you. At least your job search is right. And don't let opportunities pass you by. Last year, when I gave this little talk, someone came up to me at the end and said that she was in a bagel store or somewhere, holding one of her law books. I think it was, I can't remember the subject, I think it was criminal. And just the guy behind her said, "Oh, you're studying criminal law." And they started talking, and it turns out this guy had his own criminal defense law firm and gave her his card. If you're interested in getting some experience, I'm swamped with work, let me know. And instead of taking the time throwing it away or thinking, that was, that was an interesting encounter, she followed up. Following up is extremely important because I'm sure this happens all the time where you say, "Oh, I'm studying this and it sounds really interesting," and someone a non-lawyer responds, "Oh yeah, well my brother does that or used to do that," or they have some connections. And instead of walking away and saying, "Oh, okay," you need to follow up with that person. Say, "Oh, I wonder if I could talk to them just briefly, about what they do and how they got to where they are and how they like it." That turns into an informational and you don't get to it. So besides just constantly, letting the people you know and people you associate with daily, besides just letting them know what you're looking for, there are also some sort of just minimally, labor-intensive networking steps you can take. We encourage all of you at some point during your law school career to become student members of the local bar associations, not the ABA or the national bar associations are great for issues, like learning about religions and there are publications that they out on those. But in terms of job hunting, you want to go to local. The City Bar Association, the New York County Lawyers Association, they have many events that they sponsor, both at law schools and in-house in their facility on just every legal topic you can imagine, and they often are open to the public or to their members. And I think it's like a $20 student membership fee, which is a real bargain. Because once you graduate from law school, it costs hundreds of dollars to join those organizations, let alone attending their events. So that's something, as a student, you can really take advantage of during your 3 years here for very little cost, and it provides an opportunity to network and learn, meet people, meet practitioners who do what you're interested in. Also, like just for example, I don't know if you guys know tonight, the nightclub, the intellectual property law section of nightclub is co-sponsoring an event with us this evening on intellectual property law. So there will be people, upstairs on the 11th floor who are practicing intellectual property law and just here. We're going to give a presentation and then there'll be a reception afterwards. So that's just an example.
So I just want to throw in there, next Thursday, the New York County, the Association of City Bar in New York is doing a program called the Art of Schmoozing, which would be similar, I guess, to what we're talking about, but with people, like 8 or 10 panelists who are going to be available for schmoozing after work. And it's on 44th Street between 5th and 6th Avenue, but they have a lot of free programs for students, and that's one of them is next Thursday.
And that program, those are going to be, 7 or 8 practicing lawyers who all do different things, who are there specifically to discuss schmoozing and networking. They
call it,
we would have gotten a bigger turnout.
I think.
Schmoozing, but so they are people that don't mind, being involved in the process and talking to students. And use, like I said, not all of these things. It's not like you go to an event, you get a job. You're kind of laying groundwork. You meet people. Maybe you'll run into that person again at another. If they're very actively involved in the bar. If you go to 1 or 2 or several events and the same topic, chances are you'll see the same person over and over again. Like that's how you establish contacts and build a network. And these things are pretty, usually like food and they're not that long, right? It's not like you eat all day. It's just So, and also keep it close. I didn't bring Career Center news, but the Career Center has all kinds of events all semester long, and the topics of the events vary by practice area. But we do our best to try to get practicing lawyers, especially alums, obviously, to come in here and talk about what they do and to make themselves available to meet students. So, one big source of finding out about those events is Career Center. So make sure you read it. It comes out on the 1st and the 15th of every month. Okay. There's also a mentor program with the alumni office. I'm not sure that they send that in other topic centers, but they do. Okay. Some of you probably have done it. And I think, if you're interested in getting a mentor, contact the alumni office because they do take steps to set you up with a mentor who's an alum. It might, it's hit and miss sometimes with that too because the mentor might not be exactly in the area that you're interested in. Or you may not know at this point what you're interested in. But this is good. It's good practice to be with someone like that and to meet that person occasionally, if only to get practice speaking to someone who's practicing in the area, in law, and use it sort of as a practice for interviewing, or to look at your resume or whatever. Okay, and then also, as the person representatives, we encourage you to try to get as much work experience as you can during law school because, we're balancing your, how much work you have to do for your coursework. But the more experience you have, the more people you come into contact with, the more practitioners, and the more things you have to talk about once you do get out there and survive. Right, and then other sort of steps you can take to network are you make student business cards. Because sometimes you're at an event or you're at a bagel store and you don't have your resume with you. But if you have something called a student business card, which basically has your name, if you're a law student, where you are, your year of graduation, phone number or email address, any honors or activities you're involved in. Sometimes that can be a real handy thing to just kind of look out and give someone, and it's less intimidating than a resume. So, and then they have a chance to follow with you. And your book that you got at your mandatory or your group meetings, when you got your argument password to on the internet, there's a section here on networking and it gives an example of student business card and how to do it right. And we have extra with these cards now. Okay. Now, sort of advanced networking would be to pursue something called an informational interview. This goes hand in hand with what I said before about following up. You know, networking is not about going up to someone and saying, you know, hi, stranger, you don't know me, but can I have a job? I mean, that's awkward for all parties involved. But we can do something called informational interviewing, which is, basically following up on the contacts you have, or pursuing them, like alumni, for example, or let's say one of the speakers that come to one of our Career Center events that you didn't really get a chance to talk to here because they were just surrounded by other students, but you'd really like to speak with them for 15 or 20 minutes in their office. You could send them a letter saying, I very much enjoyed the program you gave. I'm very interested in this area of family law, and if you have any experience, you can mention that in the letter. And just request an informational interview with this person. And, the benefits of doing that, well, first of all, what an informational interview, probably the form of it, is you speak with this person either on the phone or at their office, or take them out for a cup of coffee, and you're conducting the interview. So you're asking them for information about, their area of practice. What's it like day to day? Like what are typical cases you work on? What advice do you have for someone who wants to get into that area? How to prepare? How did they get? What was the path they took to get their job? And you just have a conversation with this person about their area of practice, and not only do you get information and perhaps ideas on where else to apply, you might also then take the opportunity to say, I have my resume with me, I'm wondering if you could look it over to see if there's anything that you would change, to pursue this, or, do you mind if I leave a copy of my resume with you in case you hear of anything? I mean, this way you're in there, you seem like a very interested, earnest, diligent person who will definitely spring first into their minds if they hear of something. So informational interviewing, it takes a little effort, but it's worth doing, and it is an excellent form of networking. I guess the one thing I forgot to say is that people want, I think it's human nature really to want to have, remember the example I gave you at first. If someone calls you asking for information about, or you can speak to their friend, I think your inclination is to say, sure, that's no problem, and I can give information, I can give advice, I can give, tips on where I would apply, or where I would take the LSAT course, or I refer them to another friend who goes maybe, who goes to another law school or something, if they want that kind of advice. And I think that's just your inclination. I think you're going to run into very few people that would just say, no, and don't ever contact me again, and you're blackballed, and I would never hire you. I just don't think that's going to happen. But you will shut someone down if you ask them for something directly that they can't give you, which is probably a job, then and there. So if you walk into their office and, or if you have an opportunity to speak to them, and you just kind of blurt out, well, I really would love to work for you. I think you make them uncomfortable, and that's when, I wouldn't call that networking. You take a gamble there, because either they have something or they don't, and it's probably a better idea to let them get to know you and show them, who's speaking to them informationally about what they do, that you're really interested in. Because interest in an area is the most important thing employers look for, even when you're on a regular interview. Why are you interested? And so if this person is walking around out there knowing that they've just talked to a very bright, likable law student who's interested in this area, timing might be right for you. Like if they hear something, they will pass it along. So that is, so it's, don't view it as a job if you're going on an information. It really is an information. Oh. Just another tip I would advise you is to be organized about it. Keep track of, keep like a networking or job searching file and keep business cards of people that you've met with. And, if you do get a chance to speak to somebody, make sure you send them a thank you letter and maybe shoot them an email, a few months later, just checking in and, letting them know you're still around and if they can think of anyone else you can speak to. Following up is so key in your job search, whether it be after an interview, or two, or after an informational interview, or following up on a meeting. And again, if you want to read a little bit more about networking, there's a short, but informative section that you can go on. So we don't have time. Turn it over to me. Thank you.
Not sit for this or not have to stand?
No, I have to stand because I'm not
Project. First of all, just a lot of you guys have probably been in for interview preps, and so just a disclaimer, this is very sort of broad and quick subject, or the presentation is sort of, it's not geared toward individual employers. So when you get interviews, please come to the Career Center so that we can discuss. It's very different if you're interviewing with a large firm or small firm, government organization, public industry organization. You have a different audience and you need to sort of play to them. So I tried to be as broad as I could in this, just sort of basic things that are true for all interviews. But obviously, your interview is the sort of the place where you try and convince the employer that you are the person that they want to hire over all the other probably equally well qualified candidates, and it really can be the one area where you can sort of shine, even if you're all sort of very similar on paper. I've broken it up into like 3 stages: sort of pre-interview, interview, at the interview, and then post-interview. So for pre-interview, the most important thing you have to do is prepare. You have to do research. And a lot of students, I was a student, and I remember with classes, and I was so busy, and I would go to interviews, and it was just a nightmare if you're not prepared, because it looks very obvious to the interviewer. It shows a total lack of preparation, thoroughness. Why would they hire you? If you're going to court and you don't prepare, you're not going to be very successful. So it's pretty obvious to interviewers. I interviewed a lot of students when I was practicing, and I could tell instantly who found out about my firm, who knew about the practice areas, and things like that. So there's lots of ways you can do this. You can research on Martindale-Hubbell, which is sort of it's a directory that you can access either through Lexis or just through an internet explorer and any internet engine, right? For purposes of I would say looking up lawyers or law firms, you can go through either one, but it's Martindale-Hubbell, martindalehubbell.com. With instructions, yeah.
If you need instruction on how to do Martindale-Hubbell searches, we have handouts in the Career Center, and we'll bring them to the annex.
The cafeteria. Anyway, you go on there and you can search sort of firms and lawyers, and with one caveat, not everybody is listed in there, but quite a few. I would say the vast majority of law firms, small, medium, and large, are listed on there, and you can do searches, biographies, and practice areas, and things like that. You can certainly just go in and every place surely has a website that you can go to. Check out the people. What you can even do a search for who graduated from Brooklyn, sort of as a little hook. When you go in there, you may even meet with somebody. Try to find out who you're going to be meeting with when you go to the employer's location, so that you could try and do a search on that particular person. Certainly LexisNexis, you can put in the name of the firm, or the name of the company, or organization, or the lawyer. Try and bring up anything they may have on there. In the Career Center, we have now forms, which is National Association of Law Placement. They tend to be more medium to large firm based, so they're only helpful for sort of those kind of searches. And they do all sorts of, number of people, practice areas, minority hiring, women partners. They do a majority, whole sort of array of inquiries.
The other thing is, it's sort of important to like try and get some like inside scoop from people. Talk to people who you know who graduated from here or who are, you know, maybe third years who are working there, or come to the Career Center. Like, we all practiced in different areas, firms, government, and companies, and we have a lot of information sort of to give to you guys about that. And it's important. It's sort of like just getting like inside scoop on a place. Because there are lots of places you might not really want to work. So anyway, that's sort of the research part of it. And you also, in terms of, you will surely get asked the question, why do you want to work at this place, no matter where it is? It's going to happen in an interview. And if you don't have a persuasive answer, and you're not enthusiastic, and you're not prepared with intelligent responses by, you know, from your research, it's going to be obvious. So expect that question. It's like the #1 question you'll get on an interview. Why here? Also, the research is important for you to formulate intelligent questions to ask during the interview, either during it or at the very end when they ask you. It's very important that you have some questions for them. And they shouldn't be questions like, so tell me where your offices are. So that's, you didn't do anything. The second thing, read your resume. Make sure you know everything on it, dates, memorized. Because, don't go, oh, when did I do that? Was that the fall of '98? Or I can't remember. Doesn't look good. The other thing is your writing sample. If you're taking one or you sent one to the employer, make sure you read it, because you've read it recently and you know your sort of thesis and your argument, because they may, if for no other reason they can't come up with questions, they might ask you about that. I had someone ask me about my note years later, and I fumbled and I came up with something, but it taught me a lesson. Like, I went back and I read it before I had another interview. So people do ask that. Obviously, come in and do an interview prep with one of us. Any of the counselors can do interview preps. They're generally like 40 minutes. We do a little mock interview, ask you questions, and we evaluate responses. And it's really important because people say, the strangest things come out of their mouths. You wouldn't believe. And
that I'm sure sounded brilliant in their head.
And it's little,
out of your mouth.
Exactly. And it's not only the substance of what you say, but it's also fidgeting, eye contact. I gesticulate. That kind of stuff you want to sort of, it's good to have an objective point of view about what you're doing in an interview. So that's why it's really important. And people improve dramatically. I mean, over the course of 30 minutes on all kinds of things, substance and other things. Obviously, you want to wear a suit. I'm still amazed that people ask me if they should wear a suit to an interview. Like, no matter what, I don't care if you know for sure they're casual, you got to wear a suit. I guess the one exception would be if they specifically tell you on the phone, do not wear a suit, then I would wear a suit. But in any other case, assume that you're going to go appropriately dressed. No purple shirt, and just try to be as conservative as you can. I mean, the legal profession in general is fairly conservative, so err on the side of caution. Plan ahead. Try and figure out where the employer is, how you're going to get there, what subway. Try to arrive like 10 or 15 minutes beforehand. I mean, you can certainly sit out in the lobby or any lounge or outside or whatever, but don't be late, because that's a death sentence, being late. If you are going to be late, like something happened on the subway, actually this morning, there was a guy who passed out on the subway and I was sort of late, call and get a contact person's name at the employer or organization or whatever it is, and just say, listen, it was something. It's got to be an emergency too. You can't just call me for running late. But at least if you call, you show some courtesy to the people who are interviewing you. Leave the water bottle behind. We have lots of people who bring in water bottles, coffee. Don't do that. And don't accept, if they ask if you want coffee, don't. All kinds of stories out there. Spill coffee, burn themselves, spill over the desk, other people.
They just ask you to be nice.
They don't expect you to take the coffee,
yes,
right? And what to bring. Even if you've already sent your resume, your cover, whatever, take an extra copy of everything that you've already sent them. Or if you send them a writing sample, take your transcript, take your resume. I mean, people would always come in and I lost my, I would lose their resume. And I would always ask them for another one, so it's just carry some extra copies. Okay, the interview. Okay, so think of the interview as sort of a marketing, your own personal marketing and sales presentation. Don't marketing yourself. I think for some students it's very, very hard, and I see this because people come in with their cover letters. It's hard for you guys to sell yourselves because you feel like you're talking about yourself, you're bragging about what you've done. try and throw that out the window, because you really do have to sell yourself at the interview. And I'm not saying, you know, there's a very fine line, confidence versus arrogance. Obviously, you don't want to come off as an arrogant, no one's going to want to hire you, but you got to come off as a confident person who can sort of clearly, articulately describe their accomplishments, their skills, and things like that. Obviously, you know, first impressions are very important. When you come in, you know, you try and be as polite as you can to people who, anybody who, you know, greets you at the door. Lots of stories about, you know, people being very rude to either recruiters or secretaries, and that can definitely also be a death sentence. I mean, nobody wants to hire anybody who's rude to people that they work with. Firm handshake, no limp fish, dead. But don't hurt them. Yeah, don't hurt them. Eye contact when you're talking to the people. Make sure that you're looking them in the eye. You're not staring out the window, or it has a lot to, people get offended by that. And then I try and say, you know, a lot of people think of interviews as just sort of like question, answer, question, answer. The kind of interview you want to strive to have is more like a volley, like a back and forth, a good conversation. So, you know, follow-up questions if they're appropriate, you know, to just try and get, a lot of people just want to have a conversation with you. And most employers, they're not looking to hammer you with difficult questions. I say most, not all. I mean, occasionally you'll get the, you know, the terrible interviewer who just wants to throw you off. But that's an exception. But yeah, they're trying to, in this sort of short period of time, and also one other really important thing, the average interview is like 20 to 30 minutes. It's a very short period of time to really shine. So think of it that way. Try and get your, you know, think about what short period of time that is. You want to come across, obviously, as very interested and confident in yourself, but not arrogant and not, you know, definitely employers don't want that. And really sort of enthusiastic about the firm. Again, it shows the interest, you know. And I sort of tell people, I don't think it's helpful to go on interviews to places that you really don't want to work, because first of all, you're wasting their time, which is not nice. And if you don't want to work, it's really important. This process is also about finding the right fit for you too. So think about that. You know, don't just go on an interview because you get one. I just think it comes through, and the person feels like you're wasting their time, and you're probably wasting your own time. You know, don't be too casual. You may come across times where you're interviewing with people who look like, or you know, they just graduated. Don't assume, you know, that they're making decisions too. Some of them are sitting on, you know, employment committees. Some of them are you know, all of them are filling out forms and probably talking to people about whether they think it's appropriate to hire you. So you want to always sort of be very professional, no matter, you know, the age or of your interviewer. Don't assume the interviewers read your resume. A lot of times, you know, they're very busy, and you come in and they don't know. And this is sort of where it becomes very important that you think about the things that you want to sort of highlight in your answers. And I'm not saying, you know, think of a canned, artificial answer, but think about your accomplishments, so things you've done, you know, things you've created. Did you ever organize anything? Did you know, form a group somewhere, or write a paper on this? Or think about your accomplishments, and then think about the skills that are sort of, you can pull out of those accomplishments. And the one example I have, because everyone seems to have had, not everyone, but in their background, and what they consider hard to deal with is like waitressing or waitering in college. How do I put this on a resume? You know, and I was laughing because someone had bartending and said, you know, processing customer financial transactions. And there's just no need for that. Like, everyone knows what you do as a bartender, and it's perfectly fine. You know, it's a job. You may have been putting yourself through school or whatever. You need to make money, but there's no reason to sort of try and make it more than what it is. So anyway, so for example, let's say you waitress through college, you put yourself through college, pay tuition expenses. You're like, what does that mean to a legal employer? What skills does that mean? You know, think about it in terms of, you know, what does it mean? It's only relevant for purposes of what you can show them. So you worked full time to pay for school, or, you know, something similar to that. Obviously, you didn't get any legal skills out of it, but what it shows them is certainly a strong work ethic. If you're working full time and going to school full time, you know, you probably deal fairly well with difficult people in the situation, because you always get difficult people as, you know, patrons. Time management skills, and discipline to do that. And so think about the things you've done and sort of try and pull out the skills. And those are things you want to focus on in an interview, because a lot of you guys as first years don't have any legal skills. And that's fine, but you just have to focus on the skills that you've gotten that could be good legal skills from other jobs. And that can be, like I said, time management, interpersonal, if you showed initiative, creativity, strong work ethic, you work well under pressure. Think about all those things and what you've done in the past, and sort of whether you can sort of bring those out or highlight those in an interview. Questions. You definitely, the best questions that will come up in an interview are hopefully going to come from the conversation. So like, try and pay attention to what the interviewer's saying so that you can sort of follow up and ask him or her things. And lots of times it's appropriate to do it, you're having the conversation. You don't have to wait till the end. Oh yeah, when we first started talking an hour ago, we were talking about this case, You can do it as you're talking. But, even at the end, you should still have some questions because that's, I think employers get a little offended if you don't have any questions for them because they think that you're showing no interest in their firm. And if you're looking to work there, that's a huge commitment. You've got to have some questions about the place. You can ask them personal questions, meaning questions about what they do in particular, their cases or their clients, how they like their job, is it different than what they expected, sort of those are more personal questions. Then there are like the research questions. Like you research the firm and you have some questions about that. That shows that you researched the firm, and that's always a good thing. And then you can ask just about sort of other questions about how the departments are organized, how much training you'll get, mentoring programs, things like that. Those are all perfect questions to ask. And there's plenty of them. There's a slew of questions, so make sure you have a few to ask. Tricky interview situations, grades that aren't stellar. Most of, obviously the majority of your class is not going to be in the top 10%, so everyone's going to have to deal, most of everyone's going to have to deal with the grades issue. Let's say, I'm not going to use any grades, but let's just say they're not, they're not incredibly high. They're average, maybe even low. The best way to deal with that interview is just to be totally honest if they ask you, honest and straightforward. And generally, the larger firms, the ones that care more about grades, the medium, smaller firms, government, they probably want to know you're not flunking. But they're less interested in grades. And obviously, if you don't have grades on your resume, probably, would you say top third? If you're not in the top third, so it's probably not on your resume, so they assume that you're not in the top third. And they may ask you, how are your grades? And depending on how they are, you'll answer. But I just think it's important to just be honest about them and sort of don't make, don't try and don't be defensive, first of all. That's the bad thing. And I wouldn't try to make a ton of excuses. Oh, my professor was terrible, and blah, blah. That's going to go over terribly. If you can just say, law school was, difficult for me first semester, and the exams were completely different from what I remembered. It took me a while to get going. Especially if you showed improvement, like second semester or third semester, that's a great thing to highlight. So say you did, pretty crappy your first semester, but every semester since then you've done progressively better. You could say, I had a tough time my first semester, and you know what? A lot of people had a tough time first semester. They all went to law school. Your interviewer probably most likely didn't graduate in the top 10% either. Totally understanding of where you are. No offer from prior place of employment, which doesn't always happen.
I think it's not going to come up for a while, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes they'll look and ask you, oh, well, why aren't you working at the last place you worked at? Why aren't you continuing to work?
And I guess there's a lot of ways to answer that, especially if the economy is really crappy. You can blame it on the economy. You can always say, well, they only had 2 spots. They had 8 interns. I wasn't the one to get the job. But what you want to focus on is you want them to know you can do their work and you can do that job. If you show confidence, not defensive, I think a lot of times they ask you things like this that are uncomfortable for you, is to see how you react, your composure. And that shows a lot about you and how you're going to handle situations with clients, because lots of things come up with this all the time, sticky situations with clients that you're going to have to deal with. And I think that's a way for them to see how you react. Gaps in your resume. Just be comfortable discussing them. It's fine if you traveled all, over the world, you're, 1 or 2 years in your life. Just discuss it comfortably. Because they're likely to ask if they see an obvious gap where you don't feel like it's appropriate to put in, spent 1990 to 1992, traveling in Asia or something. But you'll probably be asked about it. Post-interview. Definitely send a thank you letter. Don't do it through email. It's just, it's nice to get, it's nothing big. It's just, thanks for taking the time to meet me. I, remain very interested in your firm. make sure there are no typos in it. That can, you know,
That's
that
the
could
most
do you in.
important thing with
With that-
thank you letters is make sure everything is spelled correctly. It almost doesn't matter what you say. I mean, you could say something very basic, short, sweet, as long as it's all spelled right, because they're gonna notice that they got it, but they're not gonna read it or over.
That's exactly right. If you don't hear anything, we recommend like 10 to 14 days later that you call and just say checking in, see if you need anything. I wouldn't badger them, and I certainly wouldn't call before a week is through, because a lot of times people meet weekly, and you never know where you came in the process, or maybe about twice a month, and so interview can take a long time to actually hear back from them. Interview etiquette. This is just some important stuff for purposes of like any interview. Don't accept an interview and then not show up at the interview. And I know you guys are probably like, well, that sounds ridiculous. Who would ever do that? We've had lots of students that do that. It reflects very poorly on Brooklyn. A lot of employers will refuse to interview students from Brooklyn again. So that's a bad thing. Call if you have to cancel it. And obviously if you get callbacks again, either show up or call to cancel, because that's not going to look good. With judges, which won't affect everybody, but anyone who's interning or clerking post-graduation, if you take an interview, if you accept an interview and schedule an interview and you go and get an offer, you are obligated to take it. It's just one of these rules with the judicial system, I would say. Looks bad for us, and they get very upset if you don't.
Judges are celestial in their own minds, but they don't, does not compute.
Yes,
If you
That's
show
just
up
a-
for their interview and then say, oh, I actually needs more time or whatever.
Right. Judge shopping is
Yeah.
not appropriate either.
If you run into a sticky situation, you can contact the person.
Yeah. And then finally, for purposes of the NYU job fair, a lot of you guys may have applied. If you need to cancel an interview that you're supposed to get your schedules for February 5th. Email Elizabeth Kane, elizabeth.kane@brooklaw.edu. She will, the deadline for canceling your interview is February 7th, 2 days after you get your interview schedule. Contact her, she'll cancel it for you. If you don't cancel it, you don't show up, NYU will preclude you from other interviews, so don't do that. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes.
Wilmington College has a pretty extensive alumni database that detailed the stuff that they're involved in as undergraduates. It was great because it told us something. It gave you immediate links to alumni. Is there anything like that?
Online?
Yeah, there's a
Ours
whole
is not
huge
online,
database.
but we do have an alumni office. If you want to speak to alumni presentation interviews, you can come to the Career Center. We'll request an alumni run for you on a practice area.
Okay.
Of course, our alumni lists are only as accurate as our alumni
Right.
keep them. So,
Yeah. Okay.